Welcome to Not Your Lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. I am going to break down, explain, elaborate, predict on cases that are in the news, things you might have heard about or wondered about from the perspective of a decades-long public defender here in Southern California. So let's go. First case I want to talk about this week is Nick Reiner. Why on earth did celebrity, buzzworthy criminal defense attorney Alan Jackson abruptly and surprisingly withdraw from the case, and what was that all about? So Alan Jackson, he's an attorney that's been around for quite some time. Most recently, you may have heard about him from the Karen Reed case in Massachusetts, where he went over there and he associated in and represented Karen Reed, and they made a Netflix documentary about it. When Nick Reiner was arrested and charged, very quickly it was announced that Alan Jackson was going to be representing him. So a couple things on that. First of all, charges are filed, and when somebody is held in custody, they obviously have to be brought in for their very first appearance in court within a pretty narrow time frame, generally 2 days, but there could be more time for weekends, holidays, etc. But generally they have to be brought in and informed of the charges against them. And that first appearance is called arraignment. Look at my fingers. I put on lip stain. Look at my fingers. Arraignment. So they can't just hold somebody indefinitely. Charges generally get filed pretty quickly, and on a high-profile case like this, Nick Reiner was going to be represented by Alan Jackson, and this was announced to the media, etc. And at that appearance that just happened very recently, suddenly, from out of nowhere, we all hear that Alan Jackson is off the case. Who comes in? Riding to the rescue, but the LA County Public Defender's Office, love them. They're fantastic, and they're gonna do a good job with Nick Reiner's case. So Alan Jackson is off the case, doesn't explain why. Why do we think Alan Jackson is off the case? So there could be a lot of reasons. He cited confidentiality, which is 100% the way to go. So obviously he's not camera shy. He's a man who will take his case out to the public, but on certain things you can't disclose why. So he stated he had an absolutely confidential reason why he could not accept this case. So there's a few reasons why and how an attorney could get off a case. And the attorney is given pretty broad latitude to tell a judge that they want to get off a case. One really common reason, and I don't think this is the reason in this case, but is if the money runs out. So oftentimes a private attorney will be retained only through a certain juncture in a case. So maybe somebody would hire a private attorney to represent somebody. It's pretty common through preliminary hearing. And if they're held to answer at the preliminary hearing, then the case is going to proceed on to trial, and then it's going to be a whole other fee for trial. And if the person can't pay or chooses to not pay, that private attorney would then come into court and ask the judge to be allowed off the case. So I don't think that's the reason. The arraignment hadn't even happened. This case is early days. Another reason an attorney might get off a case, and a reason that they really can't talk about, would be if there's a conflict of interest. And I think we're in conflict land more with this Alan Jackson withdrawal. So why would he conflict off the case? We don't know. He could have an actual conflict where there's something that was said by Nick Reiner to him, or he could have a conflict where perhaps someone, this is unlikely in this case, but it could happen in a case where you've represented somebody in the past or currently, and somehow that presents a conflict to your representation now of that person. I think maybe something was said to Alan Jackson by Nick Reiner that made him either uncomfortable or he dipped out of the case. That's what I think. Nobody's ever going to make him say, he probably never is going to say, he should not say, but just sheer speculation, that's what I think happened. So what happens next? So next up, the arraignment got continued, and Nick Reiner would have had to agree to do that. So most likely, and this happens to me often, a public defender, I'm standing in a courtroom, and private attorney is there with their client. I kind of hear out of my ear, I may be there on my other cases, and I hear, oh, private attorney is being let off of a case. Is there a public defender in the room able to take the case? So most likely what would happen is PD's office probably in this Alan Jackson scenario did not have much of a heads up that this was going to be happening. And whoever's just in the room, general deputy public defender who represents that office as a whole, is I can appear today, but we're going to continue the arraignment, and part of continuing the arraignment is for confirmation of counsel, making sure we can and are prepared to take on the case, making sure that we as our office don't have a conflict of interest. Those are kind of the main factors that are going to happen. And also just, whoa, this major case is thrown into your lap, continue the arraignment. If Nick Reiner is going to say, yes, Your Honor, that's fine with me, that we can continue the arraignment to February 23rd, I think is the day they picked. So they're coming back on the 23rd, that's arraignment. On that date, the charges on the complaint will be read to Nick Reiner in court, and a plea of not guilty and denials to all accusations would be entered, and they would set a next date. But here's what I think is going to happen on the 23rd. I think his counsel is likely to declare a doubt as to his competency to stand trial. So what does that mean? It's not pleading insanity. It's not. There's a not guilty by reason of insanity, or NGRI plea, different. In California, there is a procedure. It is Penal Code Section 1368. So you might hear someone say somebody was 1368'd, or I had to 1368 this person. What it means is I, as an officer of the court, am going to represent to the judge, hey, Your Honor, in my communications with Mr. Reiner, I have a doubt as to today at this moment, his competency to stand trial. What does that mean when you have a doubt? Under this very narrow section of the Penal Code, 1368, do you believe that this individual understands the nature of the proceedings against them? So the judge isn't going to look at, was this person ranting and raving and crazy when the crime was committed? They're not looking at the police reports. They're not looking at the circumstances of their arrest. They're looking at that individual snapshot in time. On February 23rd, when Nick Reiner is sitting in court, can he understand the nature of the proceedings against him? Does he know, I am in court, I have been charged with these crimes? That's the judge, that's the DA, prosecutor, this is my attorney, I'm the defendant. Do they understand those things? It's a very low bar, but do they understand? Do they know where they are and what is going on? Can they assist counsel in representing them? So that is another element to this. So you could have somebody who won't even speak at all, they're mute. Or you could have someone who you try to talk to them and they think you're a possessed demon and you can't speak to them. And again, I don't know Nick Reiner. I haven't met him. I haven't talked to him. I don't know what statements have been made, but based on what has been available in the press, I think we might see that his counsel will be declaring a doubt pursuant to 1368. So what happens next, and where does Nick Reiner go? So 1368 is a process where the judge has to evaluate, okay, are those standards met? Can that person understand or not the nature of the proceedings against them? Can they assist the counsel in their defense? So generally two doctors, these have to be psychiatrists, and usually the court will keep a list they are appointed to go evaluate him. So usually it's pretty customary that the judge would ask the prosecutor and they would ask the defense counsel, who do you want? And you can select a doctor. It's a list known by the court. These doctors would be ordered, go to the jail, talk to him. The doctors would administer a battery of different psychological tests. They would look into records that the jail has about their mental health. Generally, as a defense attorney, it is pretty common, I would see that we would send redacted discovery to the doctors to help them figure out what's going on with this person. Does this person have a past diagnosis? Have they been diagnosed schizophrenic, bipolar, any number of things? And then those doctors write their written report, which is sent to the judge. Judge decides. So part 2, I'm going to talk about what happens if the judge finds the person is or is not competent, but that's my prediction. I think we're going to see on February 23rd that counsel from the public defender's office is going to have gone to talk to Nick Reiner at the jail. They're going to have conversations with him or try to. They're going to do an overall evaluation and they're going to declare a doubt as to his competency right here and now to stand trial. And that will put a halt on criminal proceedings, not forever, but criminal proceedings will be suspended. They're kind of in limbo and the time rights don't apply while the 1368 proceedings are pending. So during that time, there's no speedy trial rights. There's not going to be a preliminary hearing. There's not going to be a trial date set because the time is suspended while that's happening. So I predict that's going to happen on the 23rd. Generally, courts want to see the person back in like 6 weeks, however long it takes the doctors to prepare those reports. That would put us at around April-ish. So not a speedy process, but it's important that they really look closely at if somebody's brought into court, can they even understand what's going on? And can they assist their attorney in working on their defense? So those are some predictions. I'm glad you guys watched my first episode. This is a new little side project I'm doing to my YouTubing. It's going to be called Not Your Lawyer, because I'm not your lawyer. I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. All right. Love you all. Be well, be good, and I'll see you in my next one.